Cellulose might be the most underrated material in modern home building, and by the end of this video, you'll see why something made mostly from recycled paper can outperform the pink insulation stuffed into millions of walls. Because this isn't just about keeping a house warm. It's about why modern homes can be expensive, fully insulated, and still feel cold, drafty, and unfinished. Builders know this material exists. It's been around for decades. It's cheaper than a lot of premium alternatives. And in real houses, under real conditions, it can solve one of the biggest problems fiberglass struggles with. So why is it still treated like the backup option instead of the standard? The answer starts with the biggest illusion in modern construction. What works best on paper does not always work best in a real house. Every roll of fiberglass batt insulation comes stamped with a number, R13, R19, sometimes even R49. These labels promise a certain level of thermal resistance, the so-called R value, tested in spotless laboratories under perfect conditions. But step onto a real job site and the story changes fast. Walls aren't empty boxes. They're sliced up by studs, crowded with wires and pipes, and rarely match the tidy rectangles that insulation manufacturers imagine. The moment a batt gets squeezed to fit a shallow or irregular cavity, its promise starts to unravel. The Insulation Institute's own data lays it out in black and white. Compress an R49 fiberglass batt into a standard 2x4 wall, just 3.5 inches deep, and you don't get R49. You barely get R21. That's less than half the value printed on the packaging. Even a smaller batt, like the common R19, drops sharply when it's forced into a tight space. The numbers look impressive in the lab, but compression turns them into a mirage. And it's not just about one-off mistakes. In real homes, almost every wall cavity ends up with some degree of compression. The problem is built into the process. Installers race to keep up with production schedules, and the batts have to bend around whatever's already in the wall. The more they're squeezed, the more AAR pockets open up inside the fibers, and the faster heat and cold slip right through. So what does this mean for comfort? A house that's fully insulated on paper can still feel drafty and cold, especially when winter hits. The numbers on the label don't always survive the trip from the warehouse to your living room. For homeowners, that gap between theory and reality shows up as chilly corners, uneven room temperatures, and energy bills that never seem to drop. If the insulation can't deliver its full R value in the real world, what's actually happening inside those wall cavities? The answer lies in the chaos of construction, wires, pipes, odd framing, and the rush to get things done. That's where the real test begins. Step inside the walls of a typical new build and the promise of insulation turns messy. Electricians snake wires through studs, plumbers notch out corners for pipes, and every trade leaves its own trail of holes, bends, and last-minute changes. The result? Cavities are rarely uniform. Fiberglass batts cut to neat rectangles get wedged, folded, or torn to fit whatever's left. No matter how careful the installer, it's almost impossible to avoid small gaps behind boxes, around pipes, or in odd-shaped bays. Each of these voids is an open invitation for air to rush through, carrying heat with it. The numbers are not kind. Field studies funded by Focus on Energy found that even minor gaps, voids, or compression can slash a wall's effective R value by 30 to 40% compared to what's printed on the package. That's not a rare fluke, it's the day-to-day reality in houses across the country. The Department of Energy has tried to close this gap with a simple rule. Insulation must fill at least 95% of every cavity, with no gaps, no voids, and no major compression. Their guidance goes further, warning that even a 1-inch gap can cut the wall's thermal resistance by as much as 15%. In practice, though, That kind of precision is a tall order. Production schedules push crews to move fast, and visual inspections often miss hidden gaps behind drywall or inside deep corners. Dr. Emily Woods, who spent years studying infield insulation failures, puts it bluntly: the real world is messy. Every time you see a wire or a pipe, you're looking at a potential weak spot in the thermal envelope. She points out that air doesn't need much of a path, just a sliver of space, to create a draft or a cold spot. And when you add up all those little imperfections, the result is a house that may pass code, but never truly feels comfortable. The DOE's fill mandate is more than a paperwork exercise. Their research shows that even a small percentage of unfilled space can lead to measurable heat loss, higher energy bills, and that familiar feeling of cold walls in the winter. It's a battle between the chaos of construction and the promise of comfort. The next question is, can any insulation actually keep up with the messiness of the real world? Dense packed cellulose doesn't just look good on paper, it delivers in the places that matter most, inside real, imperfect walls. In a series of guarded hotbox tests at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, cellulose packed to about 3.5 pounds per cubic foot routinely hit an effective R value near 22 in standard 2x4 cavities. That's not a marketing claim. It's a measured result, even with all the wiring, pipes, and framing that throw off perfect lab conditions. But the real surprise comes when you look at air leakage. Blower door tests on side-by-side wall assemblies show cellulose can cut air changes per hour at 50 pascals, ACH 50, by 42% compared to fiberglass batts. That's not a small improvement. It's the difference between a house that feels drafty and one that actually holds its warmth. Dr. Mark Gonsalves, who led several rounds of these tests, put it this way: cellulose doesn't just slow heat, it blocks the pathways air wants to take. It finds every corner, every gap, and seals them by default. The numbers back him up. Even when both materials are installed to code, cellulose's ability to conform around obstructions closes off the hidden leaks that fiberglass leaves behind. The result isn't just a higher R value, it's a tighter, more comfortable home with fewer cold spots and less wasted energy. But let's be clear, cellulose won't fix leaky windows, a bad vapor barrier, or a roof that lets in water. It's not a magic bullet. Moisture control and good installation still matter. In some cases, mineral wool or rigid foam might be the smarter choice, especially where moisture is a threat. Still, the evidence is hard to ignore. When it comes to real-world wall performance, cellulose sets a standard that fiberglass rarely matches. Mike Hernandez stands in the middle of a Greenbuild Homes job site, clipboard in hand, watching crews move with a practiced rhythm. He knows the numbers. Cellulose insulation often comes in at 40% less than fiberglass, and the training to install it right takes just 2 days. Yet, most builders stick with what they know. Why does the industry keep reaching for fiberglass even when the evidence stacks up against it? The answer starts with speed. Fiberglass batts arrive pre-cut, ready to be slapped into place by crews who've done it 1,000 times. No hoses, no blowing machines, no extra steps. Inspectors can walk through, glance at the walls, and sign off in minutes. For a developer juggling dozens of homes, shaving even half an hour off each job adds up to real money. Stocking is another piece of the puzzle. Batts stack neatly, fit on any truck, and can be ordered by the pallet. Cellulose, on the other hand, means bulk bags, special equipment, and the hassle of mixing on site. Most suppliers don't keep it on hand. For builders, convenience often trumps performance. At Greenbuild, Hernandez tracked the numbers. After switching to dense packed cellulose, his team saw an average 12% drop in heating bills across 20 homes. The payback including equipment rental and short training, landed under 5 years. Still, he admits, the real challenge isn't proving the savings, it's convincing the industry to value long-term comfort over quick inspections and easy stocking. As he puts it, if buyers can't see it, most builders won't change it. Cellulose insulation comes with a long list of strengths, but no material is immune to real-world trade-offs. Moisture remains the most common stumbling block. The Department of Energy warns that even the best dense pack job needs a proper vapor retarder, especially in cold climates where warm indoor air can drive moisture into the walls. Without it, cellulose can absorb water, settle, and lose its thermal edge. That is why the DOE rule calls for a vapor retarder in most wall assemblies, not just as a formality, but as a safeguard against hidden condensation. Fire safety is another concern that comes up whenever insulation made from paper enters the conversation. Modern cellulose is treated with borate salts, giving it a Class 1 flame rating, the highest standard for residential materials. In controlled burn tests, cellulose chars and self-extinguishes, while untreated paper would flare up. Still, no insulation is a substitute for sound electrical work or a working smoke alarm. For some, the proof is in the daily experience. Sarah Lee, a homeowner in upstate New York, logged indoor temperatures through a full winter after switching from fiberglass to cellulose. Her wall surfaces ran about 5 degrees warmer on average, and the living room finally lost its persistent draft. But she also noticed condensation forming on her old aluminum windows during cold snaps. The insulation kept the walls comfortable, but it could not fix leaky sashes or single-pane glass. Cellulose can close the comfort gap, but it is not a miracle cure. Moisture control, careful installation, and good design still matter. In places where water intrusion is likely, mineral wool or rigid foam might be the smarter call. Every insulation choice comes with its own limits, and the real trick is matching the right material to the job, not chasing a one-size-fits-all solution. For homeowners, real comfort comes from more than just numbers on a label. It's about drafts, cold spots, and what you feel every day. No insulation is magic, and cellulose won't fix bad windows or sloppy work. But as long as speed matters more than true performance, comfort stays negotiable. What would you choose?